So Claude Debussy, born in the 1860s, 1862, I believe, married twice, passed away at 1916. And nowadays I add those numbers up, and that's so he came, that was I think 56. So passed away kind of young, but did some amazing writing. I look at myself now and say, oh, why am I not writing all that wonderful music? So he's got an amazing repertoire under his belt, and one of the things that he was probably most known for is this concept they called impressionist, and he would come up with a concept that wasn't so linear, it wasn't so classical in its design. And this piece, though, happens to be pretty much a classical piece, I think, overall. But some of the voicings are really pretty. I'll describe them a little later. I found that if I talk about the piece before I play it, I get too conscious of what I'm playing physically and get messed up with my playing. So I'm not going to do that. But afterwards, I'm going to do a little bit of an analysis of why it's a pretty beautiful piece. And I'll just share one story with you, which is I really didn't know classical music when I was a kid. My parents played Montevani, that kind of stuff. But in orchestra, high school orchestra, we played. And one year we played Clair de Lune, I think maybe in middle school. And we kind of scratched it out. I didn't really know what it sounded like, but the piano version is so beautiful. And I remember one time my Aunt Jenny came over and she played piano. My dad said, please play Clair de Lune. And she just didn't want to. And I could see why, because if you're not practicing it right up to the moment you play it, it's a little tricky. It's not a really hard piece, but there's some tricky parts in there. And so she refused to. And I never heard Clair de Lune until literally about 20 years ago. And it's such a beautiful piece. So I'm looking forward to sharing with you today. Um, and yeah, without further ado, so this is Clair de Lune in the key of D flat, and I'll discuss some of the attributes of it that make it such a pretty song. Let me first put myself on the spotlight here to make sure that you guys can see me, and ask you guys just mute yourselves so you don't interrupt the process here, and then we'll unmute when we get back. So here goes. Thank you for coming. I wish I could ask him. Let's see. Do I have to unmute you guys? How does this work? I still have
Oh,
problems sometimes.
we can unmute ourselves.
Unmute. Okay, you can. Okay. I still wish I could have asked him how he came up with this piece, because I think he actually probably did the ending first and then embellished and built it out. Because you'll notice it's a lot of the same chord progressions and little melodic things throughout that revisit. And he starts out really simply and then builds it up into something pretty monumental near the end and then calms it down again. And I have my own kind of music theory about how songs are written. I know there's lots of chord progression ideas and things like that. For me, I think sometimes composers think in terms of just moving a note around here or there and creating this kind of a, in your brain, moving the notes around and stretching things inside your head. You kind of get this sensation in your head where things are moving and expressing in more harmonic ways. And what happens here, for example, is he starts with a D flat chord, and then he just takes out the bottom and drops it down, and it comes to a F minor, and then he drops both these notes to an E. And so there's just this little bits of movement with a couple of notes that just creates this wonderful aha experience. And just having that, then he just takes it and embellishes it. And when he starts out, one of the things one of the professional pianists taught me is what they call the connecting tissue of this piece. So you have, what happens here is then, so what they do is they actually blend some of these notes together, even though it's not written that way. They hold down the pedal here, and you get this kind of wonderful voicing, and then lift up. And so that just gives you a wonderful mix of notes, which he was famous for, just these wonderful voicings that were kind of jazz-like. And of course, this is one of my favorite parts. So you've got this dissonance, you have got this E flat at the bottom, and you have these two notes. But it's a very beautiful dissonance. And that's another hallmark of him, these wonderful open harmonic voicings. And what's interesting about this particular section is the top note and the bottom note match. It's not necessarily so obvious, but as a player, I try to get those two on the outside to match a little bit and kind of wrap it into a chord visually. Some parts are very tricky. This particular part still drives me nuts with the left hand going. It's not that easy to play. For my hand particularly, it gets caught in there. But this beautiful, just triplets going down. I'm sorry, doublets going down. He was famous for doing things like that. Another piece of his, he climbs up the scale and goes something like, let's see, I forget what key it was in. I can't do it right now, but he just climbs right up the scale. So he has a lot of fun with that. There's just beautiful movements in this piece. And then let's see, there's one of the section I wanted to highlight. What was it now? Oh God. Well, yeah, this part right here. Just some really pretty little dissonant parts in the midsection there that create the scaffolding of tension release all the way through. It's just really very artfully done. So just a wonderful piece to play and to think about how he might have composed it. I'm just fascinated by the way composers think. As some of you know, I have this monthly interview where I interview composers and ask how they come up with things. In fact, this the second week in July, I believe, on a Tuesday night, I'm interviewing a guy that actually I've known for years and only knew as a medical CEO and board advisor and member. He's actually James, you probably know him, and Paul Hartung. And I had no idea that Paul was also a composer. And he's a serious composer from ever since he was a kid in high school, in Weston High School, and has literally over 80 pieces he's documented in CDs and played all over bands in Boston. It's more, it's clarinet and more electronic kind of stuff, but really pretty kinds of stuff that I'm going to feature then. So, so I'm always fascinated by how composers think about composing and that sort of